Hello, and welcome to First Christian Church's Adult Fellowship Bible Study. We continue in our study of the book of Acts. We're now in the middle of chapter 16. Last time we left Paul and Silas on their second missionary journey into Asia Minor, which is Turkey today. They were revisiting churches that they had founded, or that Paul had founded earlier, but were prohibited suddenly from going further. There, Paul received a vision directing him to Macedonia, thus to the southeastern part of Europe, and a totally new missionary field for Christianity. Today's lesson focuses on their arrival there and the conversion of Lydia. And we read that in chapter 16 of Acts, verses 11 through 15. We set sail from Troas and took a straight course to Samothrace. The following day to Neapolis, and from there to Philippi, which is a leading city of the district of Macedonia and a Roman colony. We remained in the city for some days. On the Sabbath day, we went outside the gates by the river, where there was a place of prayer, and we sat down and spoke to the women who had gathered there. A certain woman named Lydia, a worshiper of God, was listening to us. She was from the city of Thyatira and a dealer in purple cloth. The Lord opened her heart to listen eagerly to what was said by Paul. When she and her household were baptized, she urged us to stay. If you have judged me to be faithful to the Lord, come and stay at my home. And she prevailed upon us. As we learn from the missionary team leaves the land of Asia Minor and travels by ship across the northeastern corner of the Aegean Sea in a northwest direction towards Europe. Troas is in that general direction on the Asian coast, and Neapolis would be on the opposite coast. They have a stopover on the Isle of Samothrace. That island was a pan-Hellenistic religious center and sanctuary at the time of Paul. It was, and had been for hundreds of years. It was a pilgrimage site to the Greek pagan religions. Several scholars suggest likely there was no attempt by Paul and Silas to preach or convert to these people for a number of reasons. Had there been such, and especially had there been any success, it would have been recorded here, because it would have been such a significant event based on the pagan religion and its impact on Jewish and Christian importance. Instead, it's mentioned here and no further comment is made, and several scholars say that in itself would involve a wide range of considerations as to why that might not be. Luke's introduction to Philippi is kind of awkward here in the Greek, report scholars. Neapolis, which means new city, was a coastal port city and harbor for the more important city of Philippi, located further inland. Philippi was a cultural crossroads between east and west in Paul's day, so it was a good place for Paul to locate his ministry, as his influence would travel even if he could not. Philippi was located on the famous Roman highway, the Via Egnatia. This road ran east-west mainly, with good feeder roads in all directions, as well as to the sea. It was a leading city of the region, but not the capital of this Roman colony. These people were Roman citizens. Scholars conclude Paul stayed in Philippi for days rather than months. His missionary work here seems to fit his normal pattern of going to the Jews initially, on the Sabbath especially. But archaeologists report there's no evidence, or at least none has been found, to support that there was a formal Jewish congregation present in Philippi during Paul's day. Why? Probably because there was insufficient permanent Jewish residents present in order to be able to host a synagogue. Only 10 men, resident men, would have been required, so probably a very low number. So likely their presence here, this is a transitory worship service. And most of the Jews that are there are probably there associated temporarily with trades and finance. So on the Sabbath, Jews would have met the law of Moses, the law of Judaism, if you will, through informal places of worship. In such a setting, a rabbi such as Paul could easily meet even with Gentile women and teach, notes Dr. F.F. Bruce, the famous British theologian. A place of prayer is a rabbinic synagogue, regardless of whether it's a building, even if it's just a temporary place or nothing more than a shade tree. In this case, it is likely a gathering of a few Jews and some God-fearing Gentiles who are worshiping God. Lydia seems to fit that idea here. Lydia is a Greek female name, the same as the city in Asia Minor. Most scholars conclude she is almost certainly Gentile, but others argue she is more likely a diaspora Jew with a Greek father or Gentile father. Luke here notes that Paul and his team go out of town to the river because they assumed that would be a place of prayer. Dr. Carl Holliday reports that the Greek word used here for prayer is proseuche, which can be translated as either a place of prayer or a synagogue. They needed natural flowing, especially in diaspora Jews, needed natural flowing water for their services. So they located them near springs, rivers, lakes, and oceans. The proseuche, the term used here by diaspora Jews for a synagogue, is what's being described. Josephus reports that Roman rule decreed that regarding Jews in the Roman kingdom, they could gather, both men and women of the faith, and observe their Sabbath and sacred rites in accordance with Jewish law and build proseuches near water as in accordance to their native custom. These shelters were often just enough to keep them out of the sun or rain, but they could be less elaborate buildings. And oftentimes, though, in a setting like this, there may have been nothing more than a good shade tree near the river or spring. Dr. Wall, in his commentary, concludes, it appears Paul is acting here as a guest rabbi. He could legally teach God-fearing Gentiles and Jews in this setting under Roman law. And after all, the setting here is a Roman province. He could set with whomever gathered in such a sight. But Luke does not report Paul finding men present. Instead, he meets with assembled women. Dr. Carl Holliday translates the Greek there as follows: "And having sat down, we were speaking to the gathered together women." Excuse me. Note that Lydia's mind is opened by the Lord. Exactly what that means gets great debate by scholars. Some suggest at least she does not have a closed mind, but instead is open to considering new teachings. Dr. Timothy Johnson of Emory University writes that openness of mind is a very important theme that literally Luke weaves throughout both his gospel, that is the Gospel of Luke, and the book of Acts. It is often preceded, he says, with a phrase concerning the Lord or the Holy Spirit bringing the person's mind to that point and so forth. In other words, the open mind is preceded by an act of the Holy Spirit or the Lord. It is very interesting to note the first Christian converted in Europe, and now the ministry is in Europe, is an Asian woman, this woman named Lydia, because she is from Tyre in Asia Minor, a long-standing center of indigo dye production and production of purple cloth. She is a dealer in purple in the Philippi and appears to be a successful businesswoman. Not only does she convert, but it is assumed, as said here in some translations, that she was baptized, since there was running water. Her hospitality towards the missionaries is her service to them, where she invites them to stay with her household. No small sacrifice for that day and time. Some scholars suggest we should seriously consider Lydia's business as an important item here. That it's not just something that's mentioned in passing, but is of significance. She deals in purple cloth, a very expensive commodity in its day. So she is selling to the rich, to the royal, and the highly connected Romans, and not to the poor or the average citizen. Average people even were prohibited from owning purple in some areas of the Roman Empire. She is rubbing shoulders with society's rich, famous, and influential folks. Thus, Luke is letting Theophilus, who he's writing his gospel and this Acts book to, know that Christianity is not just with the lower classes of society, which it has been accused of, according to some outside literature, but also wealthy merchants and military officers such as Lydia and Cornelius. Dr. Eugene Boring and Fred Craddock, in their New Testament commentary, teach that we modern-day Christians should appreciate that Paul and his companions continue to meet and worship on the Jewish Sabbath, not on the first day of the week, not the normal Christian holy day. After all, the reason for this, they are observant Christian Jews. The faith is still in Judaism. There is no reference in Acts up to this point of them worshiping on Sunday, except they're on Pentecost and taking the meal on Sunday. Paul follows his normal approach to take the gospel to the Jews first, which is easily done since he worships with them. Jewish scholars report their faith was very diverse in that period of time, in Paul's period of time, especially in the diaspora. Accepting that Jesus was the Messiah would not have been against their faith at that time and place, until the concepts that are outlined in the Gospel of John related to the Messiah and God, that connection changes everything. When that theology surfaces, which is post Paul, post Second Temple, then things change, and then there will be a separation from Christianity from Judaism, which is more or less recorded there in Acts. I hope this gives you some idea of how scholars, the lead scholars on the book of Acts, look at these verses, and hope you have a good Bible study, and we'll see you in a future lesson.